Guys, if I've ever said anything inaccurate here on this channel, after this video you're gonna forgive me for all my sins, because what I'm about to say is one of the biggest bombs ever dropped on this channel. One of the greatest mysteries in the history of One Piece is practically solved. We finally know how and why Luffy will destroy Fishman Island. Stick with me until the end to understand this story better, because today's video is on fire. But not before you hit the like button and join my crew, alright? So I'm counting on your subscription, with the bell turned on so you don't miss the videos that drop every week about the One Piece universe. Let's go. At the end of the Fishman Island arc, back in 2011, 14 years ago, Madame Shyarly or Shirley, depending on the translation, made the following prediction. Someone wearing a straw hat would cause the destruction of Fishman Island. Ever since, we've always wondered how and why on earth Luffy would do such a thing. After all, Luffy isn't a bad guy. At first, we even thought that Luffy might destroy Fishman Island for the sake of a greater good, maybe as a way to try to free the fishmen race from the oppression of being forced to live beneath the ocean for all these centuries. So, the fact that Luffy would destroy Fishman Island could serve as an incentive, almost a threat or a coercion, for the fishmen to leave Fishman Island and migrate to the surface world, where they could finally live under the sun. Not deep below, but, closer to the sun. And that's a point that needs to be remembered here. During the Void Century, Joy Boy failed to fulfill a certain promise he had made to the mermaid princess of that time. We still haven't had confirmation about exactly what that promise was, but it's speculated that Joy Boy intended to take the Fishman race to another place using the gigantic ship, Noah. That arc is protected by the Sea Kings to this day, so that the new Joy Boy can finally fulfill the promise of the former. Obviously, the fishmen race doesn't exactly need an arc to migrate somewhere else. After all, they're the best swimmers in the world. But of course, right, a gigantic arc would still make things much easier, especially if we consider that we're probably not talking about swimming in a calm sea, but rather about facing a global-scale flood that's either about to start or about to finish happening. So even if the fishmen can swim, there would still be the risk of them simply being swept away by the ocean's currents. And adding to everything we currently know about this great flood, maybe that arc wasn't just meant to save the lives of the fishmen, but also the lives of other races and peoples around the world. After all, the name of the ark clearly references Noah's Ark, which in the biblical story gathered one pair of every animal species from all over the world. So maybe Joy Boy intended to do the same with this ark, saving the lives of all peoples and races scattered across the world. But anyway, considering we're talking about the Luffy we know, it's hard to imagine he would destroy Fishman Island without an extremely good reason. So why on earth would the Luffy we know do something like that? Well, we know that Fishman Island exists as a form of oppression, because this race has been constantly persecuted and enslaved by the humans from the surface, even to this day. Because of that, they had to seek refuge at the bottom of the sea. Just remember how happy Shirahoshi was to see and feel the sunlight for the first time in her life, as she rose to attend the reverie at Mary Jiwa's. But despite all that, this is still a race that has learned to appreciate the beauty of their own land. They've already established an entire culture and a space where they feel comfortable and free to exist. So even if Luffy were to say that their race is now free to move, travel, and live on the surface, the fishmen would still need a bit of a push for the whole race, an entire people, to decide to migrate to the surface. In that case, maybe it would be necessary for Luffy to destroy Fishman Island in order to force everyone to leave. We've already seen Luffy destroy many things when he believes it's necessary. We saw Luffy destroy Nami's room in Arlong Park, which was the ultimate symbol of the slavery Nami had to endure under Arlong. And we've seen Luffy try to destroy the Noah Ark itself, which was being used to try to crush Fishman Island. Because of that, Luffy tried and even managed to partially destroy Noah. But in the case of Fishman Island, I don't see Luffy feeling the need to completely destroy the island. I see Luffy more as someone who would simply say, look, now you're free to live wherever you want, without necessarily destroying anything, Whoever wants to live on the surface, great. And whoever wants to keep living under the sea, also great. So I definitely don't see Luffy wanting to destroy everything just to make everyone leave. What we can theorize here is a much more specific situation. For example, the red line above Fishman Island being destroyed, and the debris from the red line falling onto Fishman Island, forcing the people there to evacuate as quickly as possible, yet many not wanting to leave because they're attached to the place they live. And in that case, Luffy might begin destroying parts of the island to force people to leave. In that case, I think it would make more sense for the Luffy we know to destroy Fishman Island. If the only motivation were simply to convince them that their race is oppressed, it wouldn't make sense for Luffy to use even more violence and destruction to try to convince them of that, right? That kind of thing happens in real life, where the oppressed end up oppressing those who don't want to rise up against the oppression. but Luffy is not that kind of person. So only a very specific reason, like the example I gave, would make the Luffy we know destroy Fishman Island. However guys, Madame Shyarly's prophecy never explicitly stated that Luffy would be the one responsible for the destruction of Fishman Island. What do you mean, Padrim? We saw in the anime, the image of Luffy wearing the straw hat. So clearly, that was Luffy. But here's where you're wrong. Yes, the anime does reveal that the man wearing the straw hat was Luffy, and his appearance is exactly the same as the Luffy we know, just with a slightly more serious expression, right? A bit more sinister. The problem is, the manga is different. In the manga, we're only shown a silhouette, classic Oda, right, of a man wearing a straw hat. And while the silhouette certainly resembles Luffy's image, Oda never actually confirms that this person has the exact same appearance as the Luffy we know. That leaves the door open for many possibilities. Continuing years later, the idea of a man with a straw hat destroying Fishman Island gained traction again during the Reverie arc. In this arc, we see IMU accessing a secret chamber that contains a second straw hat inside. So since it would be very unlikely for Luffy to destroy Fishman Island, and now there's this second straw hat, the answer seemed obvious. Another character, wearing that second straw hat, would be the one responsible for the island's destruction. In that case, we could imagine IMU wearing the straw hat and destroying the island, just like she ordered the destruction of the kingdom of Lulusha, for example. Or it could be some other character with evil intentions showing up wearing that other straw hat and destroying the island like Blackbeard, or anyone else. However, a few years later, with the arrival of the Egghead arc, a new possibility appeared with the introduction of the Seraphim clones created by Dr. Vegapunk that have the same appearance as their original versions, with a few key differences. The Seraphim have a childlike appearance but are enlarged to appear like adults, and they possess the dark skin of the Lunarians, including the flames on their backs. And keep that detail in mind, it'll be important in just a moment. So far, we know that Vegapunk managed to clone all the original warlords, Mihawk, Kuma, Boa Hancock, and Jinbe. Later, we also saw that he cloned Doflamingo, Gecko Moria, and Crocodile. We don't know how on earth Vegapunk got the DNA of each warlord. Maybe it was at some government meeting where they collected something like a juice glass, the wine they drank, or something like that. In any case, since we don't have a confirmed explanation yet, the genius could have done anything. And that opens the door for the possibility that Vegapunk also managed to clone other characters, like the warlords who came after the originals, such as Blackbeard, Trafalgar Law, or even Weevil, or even other characters from whom the government may have collected a DNA sample like Ace, who died in Marineford and left blood all over the ground, or Whitebeard, for the exact same reason. And if we go even further, the government might have also managed to clone Roger himself, who was executed by the world government, and whose body remains missing to this day. That is, it hasn't been found. So imagine a Seraphim of Roger wearing that second straw hat. After all, right? The Seraphim are pretty robust, so an above-average size straw hat would likely fit on this Seraphim Roger, making him the one responsible for the fall of Fishman Island. It's also worth remembering that Roger's appearance as a young man was practically the same as Luffy's current appearance, or even the original Joy Boy, who was defeated by the world government, might have had his body preserved and stored by them for use in the present day. Or perhaps a Seraphim of Luffy himself, if Vegapunk managed to obtain a blood sample from him during the Marineford War, or even during the Egghead arc. Just imagine a Seraphim version of Luffy being controlled by the government. It's important to note that, at least in the anime scene, the man wearing the straw hat appears surrounded by flames. And we know that one of the key traits of the Seraphim is exactly that, the flames on their backs. Anyway guys, I wanted to give all these examples here because, due to the fact that Oda never specified how exactly Vegapunk got the DNA of the original warlords, he has the freedom to do anything. And I think Oda did this on purpose so that, if he suddenly decides to invent a Seraphim from the middle of nowhere, he can just do it. So he can, for example, create a Seraphim from the newer warlords, a Seraphim of the Four Emperors, a Seraphim of Roger, of the original Joy Boy, of Luffy, of whoever he wants. And I'll go even further. If he doesn't want to use the Seraphim angle, he could just go crazy and bring Roger or anyone else back as a zombie. Since Gecko Moria is still alive in the One Piece story, all of that is still possible, and that's exactly why I didn't want to leave any of these possibilities out. First, the real Luffy destroying Fishman Island for a very specific reason. Second, someone wearing that second straw hat destroying the island. And third, a Seraphim clone of Luffy, or someone else also wearing a straw hat. But with the latest developments in the One Piece manga, we now have an entirely new theory to talk about. The one who will destroy Fishman Island won't be the original Luffy, it won't be a Seraphim of Luffy, and it won't be anyone wearing the second straw hat. The one who will do it is Luffy possessed by IMU. better known here on this channel as Luffy Gear 666. To recap, in the most recent chapters we've seen IMU perform a ritual that resulted in the possession of the giant warriors Dory and Brogy. IMU used a technique called reverse domain, where it seems she sends the original giants into a parallel reality, an inverted domain. And from that domain emerged demonic versions of those same characters, with wings, horns, and everything that makes them look like actual demons, including even the colossal size of a warrior of Elbaf. So the theory I present in this video is this. IMU will be able to perform the same ritual on Luffy during the Elbaf arc, resulting in the arrival of a demonic version of Nika into this world, a being who doesn't come to bring liberation, but only and exclusively destruction. Just like how the legends of Elbaf differ on whether Nika was a god of liberation or a god of destruction, in this case, we would be witnessing the evil version of Nika, the one that comes to bring ruin to the world. I strongly believe this is going to happen not only because it would perfectly align with the legend of Elbaf, but for other reasons as well. The first is this. We're about to witness the first battle between Luffy and IMU, even if it's indirect, since IMU has possessed the body of the Holy Knight Gunku. And when Luffy faces major villains, he usually loses the first encounter. This is done to make the villain seem even more powerful, and to give Luffy's eventual victory greater emotional payoff later on. Second, this Luffy captured plot is something extremely common in One Piece arcs. It's practically a rule. We saw Luffy imprisoned in Udon during the Wano arc. We saw him captured with Nami in Whole Cake Island. He was also imprisoned in Punk Hazard with Smoker and the others, and so on. So this is a plot device that happens often in One Piece arcs, and maybe Oda wants to scale it up to an even more intense level by having Luffy trapped inside IMU's reverse domain during the Elbaf arc, only to be freed closer to the end of the One Piece story. And during that time we could see, for example, Shanks facing off against Blackbeard, with Luffy unable to do anything to save the life of his hero. And we could witness a series of disasters happening in the One Piece world before Luffy finally returns to save the day. And one of those events would be the destruction of Fishman Island, not caused by Luffy himself, but by the demonic version of Nika. Now tell me, how can you not think this plot is insane? How can you not call Oda a genius now? Of course, Oda would need to come up with a solid reason for demonic Luffy to go to Fishman Island. Maybe if IMU ends up discovering that Shirahoshi is actually the ancient weapon Poseidon, right? Then she might decide to send Demon Luffy there. That alone would be more than enough reason for him to end up destroying everything and fulfilling Madame Shyarly's prophecy that a man wearing a straw hat would destroy Fishman Island. If you stayed until the end and liked this bombshell of a theory, damn my brother. That's it. There's nothing more to say. No more theories. This is the one, period. So drop your theories down below because your comment is always super important for the engagement of the video. Don't forget once again to leave your like and check if you're subscribed to the channel. And now, you can check out the latest One Piece videos posted here by clicking the ones that are going to pop up on your screen right now. Alright, until next time. Goodbye.